Hello and welcome to Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL. My name is Justin McMenamy, and my mission is to share both profitable and painful leadership lessons acquired over a 20-year career as a misfit in corporate America. Today I'm kicking off a series of episodes which aim to share a decade of leadership experience within a market-disruptive, semi-autonomous division housed within a Fortune 100 company. During the first episodes of Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL, I have largely discussed observations and lessons along the path of growing as a people leader. It is a subject that I am passionate about, and I assure you we will visit that topic regularly. Over the next 5 episodes, I am taking a detour into organizational leadership. Rather than discussing topics like how to interact with others or how to inspire others, I plan to share stories and strategies employed in the attempt to stave the ill that befalls organizations both large and small, the logical and natural march to bureaucracy. In 2013, I made a career change. After 10 years of attempting to fit within the rigid and hierarchical rules of Midwestern corporate America, I was ready for a change. I had had my fill of sitting in meetings where middle managers freely stated, "I don't care what's good for the company. I'm doing what's good for my career." I was sick of attending daily stand-up meetings in which the division manager sent the flock back into the cube farm with the encouragement, "Remember, period cost walks on 2 legs," ensuring that each of us never forgot our existence rested squarely on the liability side of the ledger. I had grown disillusioned by the department heads that would, in private, describe their daily routine as Groundhog Day, an endless routine of meetings which sought and celebrated alignment over action. After a decade in corporate America, it was clear to me I had been climbing a ladder, leaning against the wrong wall. For me, the only thing to do was to climb down the ladder, forget the sunk cost, and look for another place to invest my time and talent. I wasn't simply looking for another company, another market, or another boss in another pyramid. I was looking for something different. Not something different in degree. I was looking for something different in kind. Through a social connection, I was introduced to a relatively unknown ag tech company founded by a local farmer which went by the name of Precision Planting. In total, it took me 3 attempts over a 2-year period to get through the defensive cultural walls which had been built around the organization. Early in my conversations, and to my delight, employees at Precision Planting were very vocal about their intent to keep big company bureaucracy outside of the walls and outside of their culture. They did not want ivory tower thinkers. They did not want talking heads capable of filling a buzzword bingo card in under 5 minutes. They wanted doers. People predisposed to roll up their sleeves and get into the literal dirt with their customers. They sought leaders capable of both envisioning the future and personally executing and inspiring others toward that vision. It was in these first interactions that I heard the term black sheep of the blue chip. This company was literally saying out loud in interviews that they wanted people who did not fit within large, slow, established, world-class organizations. They were seeking people who quickly became frustrated at the pace of bureaucracy, people that just wanted to get something done. I quickly fell in love with the company. However, the inverse was not true. I, unlike others they hired, had stayed in the big company for a decade. This called into question the sincerity of my claims of frustration within the big company environment. "Justin," one interview question went, "if the bureaucracy bothers you so much, why haven't you already left?" Another line of questions homed in on my prior acceptance of a promotion into the role of 6 Sigma Black Belt. The logic behind the question being that at the time there was no greater manifestation of big company gobbledygook than 6 Sigma. After 3 rounds of interviews spanning a 2-year period, I was finally offered a ticket into the world of self-described corporate misfits, a band of like-minded rogues that woke up every day looking to bring new technology to market in a manner in which the customer was more profitable and the large, established organizations of the industry were uncomfortable. I had, largely through luck, stumbled onto a company that believed anything that large incumbent organizations did was guilty until proven innocent. This corporate ethos is most succinctly summarized in my first day marching orders from the Director of Research and Development. You have been at the big company. You know all their processes and methods. Your job is to introduce the ones we need and fight like heck to keep the ones we don't out of here. It should also be noted that my first day on the job as an engineering product manager was spent working alongside coworkers on the assembly line of the product I was to lead. This served the purpose of both learning the product from every vantage point, as well as answering the call of the all hands on deck in support of shipping product in time for the spring planting season. I knew instantly I was home. I had found my tribe. There is one detail I forgot to mention in my timeline of events. During the 24 months I was interviewing at this small, farmer-owned company in the middle of a cornfield, the founder elected to sell the business for $250 million to Monsanto, a large, multinational, market-leading seed and genetics company. Considering my decade of experience at another large, multinational, market-leading organization, I, along with most of the precision planting employees, was concerned about this turn of events. I was assured during the interview process that Monsanto had full intentions of allowing precision planting to largely continue autonomous operation. The acquirer claimed excitement in product synergies between the two companies. They were excited to invest in the business through capital and increased employment. At the time, those words were a great comfort to me. A decade hence, having now been a part of 7 acquisitions, both as the acquirer and the acquired, I have come to find out that that is what they all say. It is quite surprising just how much overlap there is in executive morning of acquisition speeches. I'm telling you, it is uncanny. Early in my tenure at Precision Planting, in the wake of being acquired by Monsanto, our leadership team took on the mission of protecting the cherished aspects of a small startup organization. In part, by shielding the organization from the processes and norms of the slower, hierarchical, and risk-averse cultures seen in most established market-leading public companies. Our mission, to curate and protect a startup culture at Precision Planting inside of the walls of a larger established company, seemed improbable, if not impossible. We knew from the get-go that this stunt was going to require a fair bit of executive cover, a dash of political prowess, a mountain of luck, and a non-zero amount of civil disobedience. To increase our chances of success, I began combing the annals of corporate history in search of case studies of successful, semi-autonomous, countercultural divisions housed within larger, publicly traded companies. While my search revealed dozens of acquisition announcements touting autonomous intentions as a means of retaining the innovative spirit of the acquired, unfortunately, the sands of time prove autonomous organizations rarely last when nested within an incumbent business. While I have no official stats on the life expectancy of small companies remaining autonomous after acquisition, my anecdotal experience, having witnessed dozens of acquisitions over the last 2 decades, would lead me to believe that 4 years of autonomy feels like it's on the long side of the average. My search revealed the organization known as Skunk Works. For those that are unfamiliar, Skunk Works is a nickname ascribed to the Advanced Development Programs Division within the airplane manufacturer Lockheed Martin. Versions of the division have existed within Lockheed since the 1930s. For most, the mention of Skunk Works elicit visions of legendary engineering feats, including the U-2 spy plane, the SR71 Blackbird, the F-22 Raptor, and the F-35 Lightning. While much has been written about the harrowing origin stories of the planes and technologies developed across the history of Skunk Works, for my search, these product development stories were not the treasure I was seeking. One often overlooked yet historically unique aspect of Skunk Works is that it has been set apart from the rest of Lockheed, both in culture and process, for the express purpose of fostering and maintaining a startup culture which includes creativity, utility, and a sense of urgency. I was seeking to understand the structural, organizational, and cultural foundation underneath an almost 80-year run of innovation at Skunk Works existing within the broader Lockheed culture and ecosystem. In order to maintain cultural and process autonomy, someone somewhere was putting in the work to outmaneuver the rational, logical, and often undiscerning siren song of efficiency through uniformity, which ultimately swamps most small companies acquired by large organizations. I was less interested in the speed, altitude, and range of the airplanes produced by Skunk Works, and more interested in understanding how Skunk Works navigates things like intra-office politics, corporate resource allocation processes, corporate IT standardization projects, and disparate HR policies. By some means, Skunk Works had attained 80 years of autonomy inside of Lockheed without suffering the seemingly inevitable march to synergistic integration through process standardization and globalization. For those of you scoring at home, I believe that is bingo on the buzzword bingo card. In my search for organizational insights, I came across a list authored in 1954 by Kelly Johnson. Mr. Johnson, for those unfamiliar with Skunk Works history, is credited as the founder and first leader of Skunk Works. In many ways, he is the architect of the semi-autonomous relationship between Skunk Works and the broader Lockheed Corporation. This list, historically known as Kelly Johnson's 14 Rules of Management, acts as a charter document for Skunk Works. The document seeks to codify both internal cultural norms as well as establish rules of engagement between Skunk Works, its customers, its suppliers, and its parent company, Lockheed, including behaviors and processes which go against corporate norms. Upon first finding the 14 rules, I was floored that though they had been written 60 years prior, many of them succinctly articulated processes and beliefs which Precision Planting held closely in its defense against bureaucratic creep. Over the next many episodes, I plan to use Kelly Johnson's 14 Rules of Management as a scaffolding for a discussion. I desire to compare my personal observations and experiences amassed over the last 2 decades. First, developing products within a large, established, pyramid-style Dow 30 organization. Then, developing products inside the managed chaos of a division set apart, chartered to maintain a startup mentality largely overlapping the spirit and mission of Skunk Works. Let's jump right in. The first rule of management written by Kelly Johnson is, the Skunk Works manager must be delegated practically complete control of his program in all aspects. He should report to a division president or higher. It should not be lost on the reader that the first rule prioritizes defining the connective tissue between the semi-autonomous division and the broader established company. In my experience, Kelly Johnson started in the right place. For without senior executive support and protection, there is little chance of a division maintaining autonomy within the broader company. This observation is parroted by several modern authors, including Clayton Christensen's observation in Innovator's Dilemma, that a company is not naturally at peace with itself if it attempts to serve customers through competing means. Any company which attempts to house a semi-autonomous division must be comfortable wrestling with a degree of internal tension. If resolution of this tension is delegated from the executive office into the divisions, the larger, entrenched incumbent divisions will inevitably swallow or reject the smaller disruptive division. Therefore, the smaller, culturally abnormal division must be regularly defended by senior executives from the broader organization, the marketplace, or even from shareholders. This defense must take place in the boardroom, either from the top executive or from an executive which carries significant political clout. The authors of the book Play Bigger highlight that any company which desires to employ a semi-autonomous division as a means of challenging its own market status quo must be led by a senior executive both secure in their job and prepared for the ramifications of internal strife. Otherwise said, a CEO that does not fear losing their job. This strife comes in many forms, including a chorus of stakeholders shouting for efficiencies, yelling for consolidation under the dogmatic logic of synergistic opportunities and uniformity. Kelly Johnson's successor, Ben Rich, has much to say on the importance of the first rule of management and the uniqueness of the executive that can pull it off. He comments in his book covering the history of Skunk Works, there are very few strong-willed individualists in the top echelons of big business, executives willing or able to decree the start of a new product line by sheer force or personal conviction. There is simply too much personally and professionally at stake for any executive turtle to stick his neck out of his shell. The political risk that the executive is exposed to, both internally and externally, is that a division within his company is perceived as rogue. Even greater risk is incurred if that rogue division is separated out in the quarterly earnings, and the emerging market being pursued by the rogue division is not emerging predictably and exponentially. Rich goes on to say, creating a Skunk Works group within a company is a very practical way to take modest risks, provided that top management is willing to surrender oversight in exchange for a truly independent operation that can make everyone look good if its technology innovations really catch on. Unfortunately, the trend nowadays is towards more supervision, oversight, and bureaucracy, not less. On the topic of why so few companies are willing to truly invest and maintain a Skunk Works division, Rich comments, first, I think most companies don't really understand the concept or its scope and limitations, while many, many others are loath to grant the freedom and independence from management controls that really are necessary ingredients for running a successful Skunk Works enterprise. He finishes by saying, to buck smothering bureaucratic controls inside and outside the organization takes unusual pluck and courage. In not so many words, Johnson and Rich conclude that a successful semi-autonomous division requires an executive which has a long view beyond the next quarterly earnings report, has enough political capital inside and outside of the company to defend against the synergy hawks, is not afraid of being replaced, and is trusting enough to keep their hands off of it. I'll let you guess how many CEOs of the Fortune 500 possess this combination of attributes. The answer is not many. This rare cocktail of ingredients required of the CEO and frankly the board is, in my observation, the leading reason a greater number of semi-autonomous divisions don't exist across the landscape of public companies. Most CEOs have spent nearly every sentient hour of their adult life working for, preparing for, swapping favors for, cajoling for this role. It is counter to their personal agenda of sustained employment to take on political risk for a counter-cultural initiative which asks them, first and foremost, to keep their hands off of it. And frankly, the modern CEO is far less in control than most people would assume. Most large public companies, in practice, operate under a checks and balances system that is in many ways like the U.S. government. The CEO, like the president, is the figurehead. But the direction is not set by a single voice. Mountains of negotiation amongst divergently motivated parties are required before final direction can be set. This negotiation involves pressure from the board and shareholders for efficiency and predictable growth, pressure from the incumbent business leaders for continued investment, pressure from the shared service organizations within the company, like IT, HR, safety, and legal, to move toward global processes, tools, and metrics, and pressure from investors in the media to have a simple story that explains the business mission. All pressures which act to push a company away from creating or sustaining a semi-autonomous division seeking to challenge the status quo. Let's jump back to my story and the search which led to the discovery of Kelly Johnson's 14 rules, the pursuit of sustained autonomy for precision planting whilst being owned by a publicly traded company. Precision Planting, like many companies, was founded by a charismatic visionary with a passion to challenge the status quo on behalf of the underserved customer in a market that he knew well. Over the course of 20 years, Precision Planting grew from a small side hustle housed in the founder's hog barn to a $40 million company with a reputation for a dogmatic pursuit of generating profit for the customer and an irreverent disregard to how things have always been done. As I mentioned earlier, in 2012, the founder sold Precision Planting to Monsanto for $250 million. For those of you that are my age, we call that A-Rod money. For those that are younger than me, look it up. Across the decade following acquisition, Precision Planting enjoyed a combination of executives that understood the value of a semi-autonomous division, as well as several one-time events which acted to extend the improbable streak of autonomy. For the first few years, we were able to hide under the radar, in that we were financially immaterial to the broader company. Immaterial in product offering, margin, and overall size. Therefore, we were largely left alone on the account of being too small to worry about. That is a fine place to be within a big business when markets are great and when every year is a record year. However, in a down market, the shelter of being financially immaterial becomes the equivalent of a trailer park in a tornado. 3 years after being sold to Monsanto, it was announced that we were being sold again, this time to John Deere, a preeminent industry leader and one of the aforementioned incumbents who had previously made known their frustration with our success. Many in the industry were concerned that this acquisition was an attempt to limit free market competition, in essence, an acquisition to bury. It turned out the government had the same concerns. For almost 3 years, the government investigated and litigated the appropriateness of us being owned by John Deere. Meaning, for almost 3 years, we sat on the balance sheet as an asset held for sale. For those of you scoring at home, that status means your current owner cannot materially change you because you are under contract, and the new owner can't direct you because you are free market competitors until the day of acquisition. For 3 years, we had no active executive oversight, inadvertently fulfilling rule number 1 of Kelly Johnson's 14 rules of management. Across my career, I have observed the most common organizational response to a leadership vacuum is to slow down or even stop while awaiting further instruction. In the executive vacuum that we found ourselves in at Precision Planting as an asset held for sale, we didn't sit down and wait further instruction. We ran, and we ran hard. Those 3 years of being an asset held for sale were magnificent as we continued the mission of challenging the status quo on behalf of the underserved customer. One unforeseen outcome of the leadership vacuum was an emerging wave of battle-tested leaders developed from within the business. Employees, which under the founder and under executive oversight had always been told what to do, now had the freedom to experiment, the freedom to invent, the freedom to find out, the freedom to fail. In one sense, that season of autonomy created an amazing collection of high ownership, high trust leaders. In another sense, the time between the owners ruined an entire group of people from ever successfully working inside of a large corporate bureaucracy again. During the years between the owners, the business grew significantly. The brand grew significantly. The product line grew significantly. And what was previously an immaterial technology company in a hogshed in the middle of Illinois became an emergent player in the soon-to-be hot market of ag tech. Emerging from litigation, we were instead transacted to AGCO, a smaller incumbent in the industry. This transaction equipped Precision Planting to be placed in a great environment for the continued fostering of a semi-autonomous division comprised of the black sheep of the blue chips. I was blessed with the opportunity to lead within Precision Planting for many years following the acquisition by AGCO. For many of those years, I and others navigated the tension of a small, nimble, countercultural division chartered to make money in a disruptive manner, seeking to coexist within a larger incumbent organization. I cannot understate the importance of Kelly Johnson's first rule of management. It is a naturally unstable environment to house a division like Skunk Works within a substantially different organization. The only way the arrangement succeeds is if the chief executive and the board are comfortable enough in their skin to stand up to the shareholder, the market, and the incumbent business leaders and explain that thing over there, it's different. My tenure as a leader of a countercultural division within several larger established companies was marked by both executives that didn't care enough to worry about our shenanigans and executives that cared deeply about protecting us from being consumed by the rest of the organization. For both types of leaders, I am eternally grateful. That wraps the first episode on the pressures, processes, and pitfalls of building and maintaining a semi-autonomous, disruptive division inside an incumbent company through the lens of Kelly Johnson's 14 Rules of Management. I don't think it's going to take 14 episodes to complete the list, seeing as we only covered the first rule in this episode, but who knows? We'll take it as it comes. In upcoming episodes, I will discuss my experiences with managing budgets, org charts, metrics, and internal process controls as part of leading a semi-autonomous disruptive division. For those that wish to share comments, praises, or large sums of money, you can reach me at justin@grody.io. For CEOs that feel that I completely misrepresented their motivations and the complexities of their job, or for those in search of a good time, you can reach Jenny at 867-5309. Thanks for your time. Let's do it again soon.